Hey guys, Zen here, and today is actually our last chance at playing Outbreak in Rainbow Six Siege. And so in this video, I wanted to quickly go over some pros and cons of the game mode, and at the end, I'll let you guys know whether or not I want to see it return in the future. But to start this video off with the pros of the game mode, we have the gameplay. So the gameplay in Outbreak I think is really solid. I love how they've been able to bring in aspects of the multiplayer and implement it into the co-op experience. For instance, we still have all of the destructibility in Outbreak. We still have basically all of the operators' abilities that we're able to use in the game mode are pretty seamless and work pretty much the same as they do in multiplayer. So it ends up becoming a really enjoyable experience when you tie all those elements together, and I think that the gameplay overall is really solid. And compared to the only other co-op or PvE style of game mode in the game being Terrorist Hunt, I think Outbreak really does a good job at shining above the rest and just being a really solid experience at a gameplay level. But the next thing that I have on this pros list is the bosses. Now, the bosses in Outbreak are extremely well made in my opinion. I do think that the Smasher is a little bit too strong, and I would like to see him brought down a little bit as far as health, but overall, I think all of the bosses are definitely worth your while. I think that they're really cool and interesting kinds of enemies. I also like how they add elements and different things that we've never really seen in the game. So for instance, with the Rooter, they will trap you and you won't be able to move. There is no other mechanic in the game that really does that to you. And then with the Apex, him being able to shoot that almost ink-like substance onto your face where you can't see. It's just really interesting dynamics that I really like that came out of the bosses, and I really think that it's one of the highlights of Outbreak as a whole. And the final pro that I have for Outbreak is actually the maps. Now, I really enjoyed the fact that the Outbreak maps were built from the ground up for this game mode specifically. I think it would have really hurt the mode if they tried to make this experience work with all of the current multiplayer maps, and it really also would have thrown the whole thing off for me personally, because at a lore standpoint, I couldn't imagine all of this stuff happening in all these different regions, all these different territories. So I do like the fact that they built these maps from the ground up, and they are much larger than the maps that we have in multiplayer, and there's also a ton of different gameplay dynamics in each of them. So I really do enjoy that part of Outbreak. I think it's something that not a lot of people notice, and it's really seamless, but there's also that level of magic to it as well, and that's why people, I think, haven't really noticed it, because it's a really good way that they've designed it and it just feels natural. I also like the different ways that they've messed with verticality in these maps as well. There's a lot of times where you'll have to defend a base at a top floor or top level and you have enemies swarming in from the bottom, or you're not really able to jump out of a window onto the ground. I like those different kinds of elements, and I think it's really cool that Outbreak had that stuff at a baseline level. But moving on, we're going to talk about a few of the cons that I have with this mode, because of course this mode is not perfect and there are some things that I want to see worked on. But the first thing I have here is that Outbreak actually feels quite repetitive, and I've heard this a lot throughout the community, and a ton of people have shared this sentiment. But unfortunately, Outbreak does have that feeling of repetition. I mean, once you completed one pandemic run and then one normal run, you essentially have seen and done everything minus using the different ops. Now, I do realize that this is something that was put in for free, and there are some limitations that come with that, so you don't really want to expect the world, but I was hoping for a little bit more diversity. I was hoping for a little bit more of something to switch it up, especially considering we had this event for an entire month. It would have been interesting to see them throw in little modifiers or challenges for us to do outside of the Ubisoft Club, and so that was definitely something that I wanted to see worked on. Outbreak just feels a little bit too repetitive. But the next thing is that there's not enough content. Before Outbreak was actually released, there was this leak that there would be exclusive operators to the mode. Now, obviously there are some operators that you can kind of consider exclusive to this mode, considering they're the only ones you can play, but at the time the community assumed that there would be these Mexican operators that you could only play in Outbreak, and they wouldn't be implemented into multiplayer in any way. Now, obviously we got Finka, we got Lion, but I thought that it would be pretty interesting to have those exclusive operators and to really see how they affect Outbreak, because we are actually limited in the fact that all of these operators have been built with multiplayer in mind and probably didn't have any sort of thought as to how they'd be worked on in Outbreak. So I think that if they were to have some exclusive operators and some exclusive weapons, it would probably add a little bit more content to the game, and I think that it would be really appreciated by the community as well. But the final con that I have for Outbreak is actually the fact that it's limited time. Now, I realize a lot of people kind of wanted this to be a short-lived experience, and obviously Ubisoft did as well, but I would really like to see Outbreak last for a longer time if it ever gets implemented again. I think that in general, if they add more content and they make it a little bit less repetitive, people will go in and play it. I know for myself, I played at least one Outbreak run every week just to kind of warm up or just to have fun. Now, for me personally, even if I was to use Outbreak only as a way to warm up, I think it would be a little bit better than Terrorist Hunt, because Terrorist Hunt to me is just completely flat and boring. There really isn't much of anything to do in Terrorist Hunt. But with Outbreak, I find there to be a little bit more purpose. So overall, those are my pros and cons for Outbreak. Again, this is your last chance to play. So if you haven't played Outbreak yet and you want to, you can only play it for one more day. So make sure that you guys get in your playtime, get the loot that's there, because that loot presumably will be gone forever. Now, hopefully Ubisoft does do something where they add in another limited time event or something to kind of give us another co-op like experience. I think that would be really cool. But if they wanted to bring Outbreak back and kind of just add on those layers and bring more content and entice us a little bit more to click into it, I think people will become a little bit more attached to it and enjoy it. And I also think that they need to remove the pricing on the Outbreak packs and make those available by playing the mode. That would have definitely been a little bit more of an incentive to get in, get that loot, and have a good time that way. But unfortunately, this is a game. They have to make money on it somehow, so those were locked behind that. But it was a free mode overall, so you can't really hate on them too much for that. I want to know your thoughts. Do you want to see Outbreak return while it was here? Did you have a good time with it? If it did return, what are some of the ways that you would want to see it changed? And if it didn't, would you ever want to see any other kind of co-op like experience in Rainbow Six Siege? Let me know everything in a comment down below. If you did enjoy this video, please drop a like and subscribe with notifications if you're new. With that being said, it's been Zen.
Hey, I'm out.